Moving on to the morning of the 26th, I'll look briefly again at Operation Epsom like I did at the beginning of yesterday's video, and some of the details here will give us some more context when it comes to the air operations that are carried out by the wing. And again, from Victory in the West Volume 1, on June the 26th, flying weather was so bad in England that the large program for air support for the opening of Epsom had to be cancelled, and for the first time since D-Day, practically no aircraft based in England left the ground. Only 83 Group, of which the 144 wing is part of, stationed in Normandy, would be able to help 8th Corps. And though they flew over 500 sorties, their support was handicapped by low cloud and heavy ground mist. Now, we left off yesterday with the 49th Division securing some high ground and some villages over here on the British right, and today starts with 15th Division pressing down to the south, and it's going to tell us that Le Gaulle was taken after a sharp fight, but Saint-Manvieu, Chu, and La Haute-du-Bosque were only injured with hand-to-hand fighting, and it took a long time to overcome the parties which held out to the last in ruined buildings, farmyards, and orchards. And the line at that point is right down here through this line of villages, and we saw Chu actually yesterday. This is the exact location where these targets were hit by the wing yesterday. So the account here continues. Soon after midday, the 11th Armored Division was ordered to push through Tournanville and Gavreux, where the Odon is bridged. And that's going to be these two locations down here. That was the goal. But it says its 29th Armored Brigade found, however, that all attempts to deploy south of Chu were met by determined opposition, and after some hours of costly and abortive fighting, it was clear that the Odon bridges could not be rushed by the tanks that night. So that's really how the day ends, with the British pushing no further down than this line of villages, and the Germans holding the line north of the Odon. And so with that, for context today, let me go ahead and get into the squadron summaries and have a look at what the wing did manage to accomplish. Now, 441 Squadron, the squadron carried out an armed reconnaissance of Mouzedon, Bretteville, Bernay, Falaise, and Pierre area. A convoy of 20 to 15 or 15 to 20 vehicles were attacked in the Argenton area, 2 flamers, 3 smokers, and 6 damaged. 2 of our aircraft were sent on an air-sea rescue patrol 30 miles north of Cherbourg. Visibility was very poor and no dinghy was sighted. Our aircraft were forced to land at the A3 strip before returning to this strip. There were many American transports in the vicinity, so that the dinghy was very likely to be sighted by one of them. And the A3 that I mentioned is an ALG used by the Americans. If it starts with an A, it's a US ALG. If it starts with a B, it's a British ALG. Now, slow day for 442 Squadron. Raining this morning, guns started early to continue the pounding heard last night. On readiness, 30 minutes from 0900 till noon, more rain in the afternoon and evening. Pictures in Wing Abroad of Dakota's landing, RCAF personnel in France on the 15th of June, total flying hours nil. And the record does include that shot, not in very good quality. I'm going to make an attempt to find this, and if I do, I'll insert it here, but this is the photo in the Wings Abroad newsletter that it just mentioned. And then 443 gives us weather cloudy with periodic bursts of rain. Squadron ready to take part in an operation to assist the Army push in the Caen area, but weather handicapped air support. On offensive readiness from dawn, took part in several missions. Flight Lieutenant Prest claims 1 Focke-Wulf 190 damaged. Flight Officer Henderson had a narrow escape when 3 Focke-Wulf 190s got in his tail, and a cannon shell from one exploded in his wireless set behind the cockpit. He was uninjured and able to fly the aircraft back to base safely. Several patrols from British beachhead flown by our aircraft as ADGB, and that's Air Defense of Great Britain, or fighter forces that are stationed in England, were unable to come across from England due to weather conditions. Very heavy rain during the evening has caused the airfield commanding officer to put the airfield unserviceable. The perimeter track is in very poor condition and is a greater contributing factor to the unserviceable state than the landing strip. And that's referring to the perimeter taxiway, so it's still possible to take off and land if you can get to the runway. So let's go ahead and pick up with the missions. First up was 443 with a 0600 to 0650 scramble. And okay, I'm squared away now. For some reason I had that down as a scramble at that time, but that is an armed reconnaissance to Argenton, Liège, Bernay. 2 returned early due to minor unserviceabilities. The remainder of the squadron was split as weather conditions were very poor. Proceeded to Argenton area, nothing was seen on the roads. And then next up we have 441 Squadron 0840 to 1010. And this is an armed reconnaissance in more or less the same area. They do report a convoy of 20 or 15 to 20 attacked in the Argenton area. 2 MET in flames, 3 were smokers, and 6 were damaged. And that would be reinforcements and supplies coming up in support of the Germans, and anything that could be interdicted on the roads before it reaches there would be a bonus. So after that flight is down, we have an 1100 to 1215 scramble by 443 Squadron, and they tell us 4 aircraft scrambled to patrol at 4,000 feet. Sighted 12 Focke-Wulf 190s at 9,000 feet over Bayo. Attempted to close and engage, but were unable to close. 5 different layers of 5/10 cloud gave the enemy a chance to escape. Flight Lieutenant Wilson got 1 burst at 400 yards, but was unable to claim any damage. Now, this is followed immediately by another scramble at 11:30, and this one runs into some aircraft as well. And this is 6 aircraft scrambled from readiness to intercept enemy aircraft in beachhead area. 20 Jerrys sighted west of Rouen, Focke-Wulf 190s and ME-109s. Several layers of cloud at 5/10 made chase difficult. 1 damage claimed by Flight Lieutenant Prest, who got in 1 burst at very close range, but then the cannons jammed. Flight Officer Henderson was jumped by 3 Focke-Wulf 190s at 6,000 feet, and before escaping into cloud, received a direct hit from the cannon shell in the wireless set and port wing roots sprayed with machine gun bullets. And the aircraft is now Cat C, pretty heavily damaged but repairable. The flight formed up again at 9,000 feet above the cloud, and after a further short patrol, all aircraft returned safely to base. And then, a couple hours later, 443 is up again on a scramble, 1410 to 1530. 12 aircraft divided into sections of 4 apiece, on the lookout for enemy interference to Army operations on the ground. And just as a brief aside here, I'm trying as I go to nail down the types of formations they were flying in. They, up until this point, have been going up pretty consistently in sections of 6, so I would imagine that they would be split off in pairs in what was known as the Fluid 6 formation. Now, Johnny Johnson tells us in his book, after the fact at least, that he was a big believer in the Finger 4 formation. And earlier in the month, they were clearly, up until this point, going up in sections of 6. So I'm going to pay a little bit closer attention, I guess, from here on out to see if the trend of sections of 4 continues. It might just be a little slight doctrine shift that we're seeing here in the wings, so more to come, I suppose, as we go. Now, continuing on, Flight Lieutenant Schenk returned shortly after takeoff due to the fact they could only obtain 4 pounds of boost. No enemy aircraft encountered by any of the 3 sections, patrolled east flank off Le Havre, weather closing in, 10/10 cloud at 200 feet, and rain. That's not good. Okay, next up we have 441 Squadron on an air-sea rescue patrol, looking, I presume, for a dinghy in the English Channel. A number of aircraft would have been participating, and it's described as air-sea rescue patrols. These aircraft patrolled 30 miles north of Cherbourg. Visibility was so poor that no dinghy could be seen, and the aircraft were forced to land at A3 Strip. Again, that's a U.S. airstrip of the same type that the British are flying out of, just to the west. And then the aircraft, possibly even this same day, would have taken off when able and returned to B3. And then the last mission of the day, before the airfield was closed, 1625 to 1740. 3 sections took off to patrol over the shipping lanes and British beach area. No incidents reported, weather very poor. Patrol flown at about 2,000 feet below the cloud and through rain. And this serves as another data point for nailing down formations, and this says 3 sections. It is 12 total aircraft, so this would have been in sections of 4. But in either case, the airfield operations were closed down for the day, and as much as I'm sure they would have liked to have continued to support the operations on the ground, that would have to wait until the next day. So that's where we're going to pick it up on the morning of the 27th. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you then.